Welcome to the Madcap Coffee podcast. A proper cap. We are here at our OG location at 98 Monroe Center in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where we started in 2008. And now, what are we drinking today?
Today we've got a super fun drink. The sun's out. It's getting warmer, so we want something refreshing. This is actually a sneak peek of something that's coming to the Madcap menus in a few weeks, a few days. I don't know. Photo shoot's coming up.
Sometime this summer, 2025.
Sometime coming up.
Yeah, let's go with that.
This one is called the Howie Bling. It's a shout out to a previous barista who came up with this drink. But this is a really fun pineapple jalapeno tea-based drink. We've got a fun little umbrella with a nice little pineapple gummy tahini garnish on top. I'm going to save my garnish for the
chili.
Tahini chili. Pineapple glass. Like, come on now. Whoa.
Come on.
That screams summer.
That is good.
That jalapeno bite.
At the end?
It hits the back of your throat and it's game over.
Yeah.
Just wait till you have that little.
Did you strain that jalapeno powder?
I didn't make the syrup.
It's still in there. I don't think we're going to serve it at that heat level.
I had one like that during the R&D phase and I was crying. But my tolerance is low.
Yeah? We got to get you more jalapeno stuff.
We do.
Come on.
Yeah. Howie Bling.
Who's joining us today, Josiah?
Yeah.
Hey. So I'm the manager of this lovely flagship location here at the Madcap Monroe Center in the heart of downtown Grand Rapids. My name is Rhianna Benny. I've been with the company for almost 3 years now. I've been a manager, almost 4 years.
I was going to say, it's got to be more than 3.
But I've been a manager for almost 2 of this location. So
I only knew that because Rihanna started with Madcap maybe like 5 weeks before me, and she was always better than me. She still is better than me.
Oh, come on.
But that's why I knew you were wrong. I was like, I think I've been here.
You're like, wait a minute. It's not only been 3. The last year has flown by, in case anyone was wondering.
So comfortable now. It's like an old shoe.
Exactly.
Not you. The cafe is like an old shoe.
Sometimes it feels like that, in the best way, though.
Yeah.
So this has been here since 2008. This is the first
2008
spot.
Mm-hmm.
This is our first location, first of one of 4 right now. It's been a journey. This one has gone through so many different iterations. It's at 17 years. We had a cafe renovation at one point, so you can see part of the bar behind us, folks. If you're watching on video, the bar was rebuilt at one point. I can't even remember when that was now at this point.
There used to be a hole in the floor.
Yeah.
There did. Yeah, we used to roast in the basement of this cafe, and you used to be able to walk in and look down through the hole in the floor and watch our roasters roasting. They hated it.
Carrying green coffee down the stairs, I can't imagine was fun.
Yeah, so this cafe's been around for a minute, but this cafe is kind of coming into its own in the last couple of years post-COVID. And so I'm excited to talk with you today about retail and like the things you all are doing in this space, because I think you and your team are really leaning into a lot of the things that we're pushing harder on through our education and ethos and everything else. And this is a location that pre-COVID, we thought had hit sort of its revenue ceiling in terms of what it was capable of, and you guys have broken that and are continuing to push that. I think it has a lot to do with not that the quality of the coffee has changed, but there's other things y'all are doing. So that's what we're excited to talk about today with you.
Heck yeah! Excited to share with you.
Where should we start?
I think I might go off script. I thought of a question while you were talking, and I'm curious how Rihanna would ask. I think it's a good entry point. So you didn't start at this cafe. You started at our Fulton Street location. And I know this because we worked together at that location. But what does it mean for you to be, you've now been here for a few years. Like, what does it mean for you to be at the flagship store and now managing the flagship store?
It comes with so much history. And I think with that, a little bit more responsibility. You want to communicate that history well to everyone that comes through the door. So you have to communicate that with your baristas so that they can share that with folks effectively. I think you feel the difference in the clientele between the more neighborhood location of the Fulton Street Cafe versus this downtown location. We're located really, like I said, in the heart of Grand Rapids, and it's teeming with life and folks from out of town, folks from different parts of the world even. So it's really exciting, I think, to be able to work in a location that draws such a versatile crowd that is less neighborhood, but it's more national. So I think, and also working with, the roastery did used to be in the basement. We have the cage that used to hold the roaster still down there. You can see and you can feel the history around you when you're working here. And I think that just makes baristas more excited to be here, even. So, and that makes me more excited to manage them. And you can feel that difference in this space, really.
The basement is kind of a Madcap museum.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, 17 years. It's collected
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
there's glassware, menus,
competition glassware, random. I don't even
seats,
know. I don't
tables.
even know what's down there anymore.
I don't even know everything that's down there.
That used
every
to
time
be
I look, there's
the
something
office
new.
down there. Our brand designer likes to hide down there. That's where he gets inspiration from. Maybe
I still find him down there sometimes when I take my lunch break. I'm like, "Hey, Grant, how you doing?" We have to get a Grant is in sign for the basement. Yeah.
Oh no, he's okay.
He's somewhere.
He's not in the basement right now.
So to answer your question, Josiah, it feels great to be able to have been a part of both. Honestly, to be able to have all of the different flavors of Madcap, and to really get in touch intimately with the different cafes. It's been great.
I'm going to rearrange kind of where we were planning to go. You teed up a good segue. Did you work in coffee before Madcap?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to talk about your background leading up to Madcap, and you could talk about other coffee experiences if you wanted to. That would give an interesting perspective. But just thinking about what has made you the manager you are of this space today. Maybe it came from your coffee experiences. Maybe it came from other places. I know that you were pretty into some other things as well before coffee. So yeah, I think looking at you before you came to Madcap, what are some things that you really feel have developed you as a professional that lend to you being effective in your role now?
Well, thinking just coffee wise, I have so much that comes to mind for this question. It's really twofold. The first part is my coffee experience. I feel like I have been a barista for about 10 years now. This is starting my 11th year. So I started at Starbucks, kind of where you start inside of a Target. I was there for like a year, and you learn a lot of just about how it feels to be serving someone else, and like that was my first job, and like what it means to make something for someone else to a certain parameter. And then I moved forward into specialty coffee experience. I worked at a specialty shop in Holland called 205 for almost a year, and I was trained by some of the guys that owned Stovetop Coffee initially, and I learned a little bit about the science of extraction, and that really got me interested in specialty coffee and working with getting a little bit more specific about the bean that you're working with, the variety, the process, where like what you're doing, what you're tasting, and having a quality that is consistent across the board. So that is a little bit deeper than just a vanilla latte or a macchiato. That's a larger version of what we're used to here. So it was a little bit of a dip into that specialty world that got me really intrigued and wanting more. So then I wanted to move into a city that offered that to me. So I did end up moving to Grand Rapids, and I started at Lion Street Cafe over there. A little bit more like residential, kind of more like the Fulton Street location, a little bit more, neighborhood feel to it. You have a lot of daily regulars that are like, you know, very specific orders. And I think you learn through all that experience. I had a good dip in what it means to be preparing consistent quality drinks, and then what it means to be building that regular base. And I think also alongside of that, what it means to just be a good barista. So through all of that experience, I think just general cafe experience, bringing a lot to the table here, that kind of teed me up to be really excited to go that extra mile that Madcap provides. Coming in here, I was asked, why do you want to work at Madcap? And like, why Madcap after all of these years? And it really always came back to I wanted more, and I wanted more training. I wanted more information, and I was really excited by what I was doing, but I knew that I could be doing more. So Madcap was really the place that I could do that. And so when I felt the opportunity calling, I was like, all right, it's time to go. So I felt like I had enough behind me to where I could really put my best foot forward here. And so I came here after being at a cafe for about 4 years and in one cafe. And I think that as well, being in one spot for multiple years helps you get really in touch with how you can grow and change as a barista. So after that experience coming here, it was really nice to just be my fullest barista self, and have as much at my disposal to work with as possible. So training up through that and just being a barista here for about 2 years was awesome. I got to do barista competition, and that was incredible. I got to go to nationals and experience that and expo and all of the world behind that. And there's so much to specialty coffee that I was introduced to here just being a barista. And then I got to manage, which is even more incredible. So I feel like even through that, all of that made me ready to finally be the best manager that I could be, because then you know what it's like to work in every type of situation in the cafe. I've seen just about anything, and I can be ready to help folks when they need. I can help even foresee a lot of the issues that are going to happen and stop them from happening, which is really, really cool.
That's cool. I feel like it's cool to see how you reflect on your 10 years, over 10 years in coffee, and to see clear different chapters and like the growth from each, but how none of them were necessarily wasted, right?
Yeah.
Like you learn something at each stage. And I feel like people listening could probably resonate with that. They might be at one of those stages and, or resonate with how you're feeling. And like, I want that next step, or I want that next thing, and not really knowing where that thing is.
Yeah. And in those moments, it's all about like looking around yourself and figuring out what you can do. And, sometimes it's not maybe always the biggest thing, and you might feel stagnant for a while. But I think those points where you're feeling stagnant, you're actually gaining a lot of really consistent learning experience. So as a barista, I know it can start to feel really repetitive over time, but I think it's those repetitive moments that you can even push yourself more just to be faster or higher quality. And I think it's just that like that grit that we talk about a lot at Madcap that really it's super important. And I found that throughout my barista experience, that's the most important quality, is just constantly having grit and like finding something to work hard on, because it's not always going to present itself. You have to kind of look for it sometimes.
So were there like specific moments in that series of events and places where you've worked where you were like conscientious of putting this in my pocket that'll help kind of make me a good cafe manager someday? Or when you were given the opportunity to manage a cafe, you were like, wait, actually, I know what this should look like or could look like, or I know what I could do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've always been kind of in a position of leadership when I'm in a cafe, like a shift lead or someone that new people are coming to with questions. So it's always been a moment for me to, practice. Like I've always been practicing teaching people and educating them on how to be a barista. But I think I was always thinking about what is my manager doing right now? And it was never what I was always doing. They're always doing something higher level. And so I never, always know what they're doing. And so I think it sometimes takes being a manager to fully understand what your manager is doing all the time. Because you really like you think about it like, yeah, you're ordering cups, but it's all about keeping the small details of a space organized and in place for baristas to pick up and then go even further with it. So it's all about setting people up for success. And I feel like that I've focused on that just as a barista. And I think that has translated just in a new set of tasks as a manager.
And I think, obviously, you alluded to there are things as a barista that prepare you to a certain extent, even if you're on the receiving end of being a manager.
Mhm.
But like, what are those things when you became a manager that you're like, oh, I didn't know that I was responsible for this, or because I think to something you guys were just talking about, for a lot of baristas, they think the only way to move up is to become a manager, and it is, and honestly, most folks who end up managing in retail and coffee don't necessarily love it, and those people that do, and we know some of those people who are practically lifelong retail managers, which blows my mind. But they're so good at it, and not just the detailed barista quality aspect of it, but some of the you alluded to some of it, just like earlier, like you're able to sort of think ahead where problems are going to be and solving them, and it does involve a handful of people that you're responsible for as well. But yeah, what are some of those things that surprised you?
I think it's the amount of intuition that you have to have about your space. You have to be able to look around and see, like, you have to really look with listening ears and eyes that are really seeing. You have to hear those little creaks in the door, and you have to like, notice the change of pace of the clientele coming through the door before it even happens. You have to keep in You have to really keep good tabs on your trends as a cafe. It's about keeping detailed notes, I think, year over year, keeping really organized, and then week by week, I think we do a really good job of keeping track of our sales numbers and everything like that. And I think that really helps keep in perspective, like what we need going forward, I suppose. And I wasn't really aware of how important it is to be keeping those detailed notes, like week to week, day to day, year to year, what's going on, so that you can become in tune with like what's going on in the cafe day to day and how it feels. So I think that surprised me, just how important it is to be diligent about little things like that. I think something else that really surprised me was just how much it is about the people that you're managing. I think that it's going to be about the coffee, and it's going to be about making drinks and working behind bar, but I don't think you realize that you are actually just kind of monitoring the vibe of and the attitude of your workers, and making sure that they have everything that they need and that they're set up to go. I think that takes most of my time, is making sure that everyone is feeling supported, because there's a lot that goes into that, whether it's, behind bar, if they're fully trained up, or if they have the proper staff next to them. There's so many different aspects that go into it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question at all?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
I think that was a home run.
Cool.
Yeah. Not everyone who's listening to this may have experienced this cafe, at least maybe under your management, and it'd be really awesome if they have, because then they can probably understand this conversation even further to what you're talking about. But I think you're kind of talking about a little bit of like what it looks like to be a successful manager and some of the things that you learned and developed as you've been in this role. But like you're saying, like you've got a whole team of people underneath you, that because you don't live here, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
May
have
feel
days
like
off.
it sometimes, but I definitely don't.
What makes a successful retail team in your mind as a cafe manager? And then maybe like, what are some things that you do to get to that point?
So what defines a successful retail team?
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to keep consistent sales, that I talked about a little bit. And I think going into that, it's really important to, again, like I said, keep detailed notes of what's going on there, so that you can keep track of your sales and do your best to boost them when you can. I think it's really good to monitor, feedback from the public, whether that be through reviews or just having that honest rapport with your regular base. I think that is really where it comes into play. I think that's what I like driving home as a manager, really, is that connection with our regular base, because it's a little bit more few and far between downtown, because we're a little bit more of a transient crowd down here. So we're really holding on to those regulars, and we're really trying to build that trust between them, so that they can trust what we're recommending to them drink wise, but also so that we can trust the feedback that we're getting from them, so that we can really be like, yeah, this is going well, or this feels really good to you guys, or it's not going so well, it doesn't feel so good. Or you can tell when a customer is enjoying themselves versus when they're not, or if they're just having an average time. I think you can tell by the level of engagement that they're giving you, the level of just excitement in the room. I think you can read that as a barista. And I think that teaching your team to like lean into that is really helpful. Really teaching the team to also trust the regulars and take their word and listen to them too is really important. So that helps build a lot of success. And then also keeping tabs on, just your regular reviews. I think you can gain a lot from people who feel compelled enough. If there's a lot of words in our Google review section, that's great. I find if that people are leaving really detailed reviews with a lot of photos, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But I find that when people are taking the time to leave really detailed reviews with lots of photos and scenario examples, I find that is often coming in stride with us giving some of our best service. And I think we get more reviews like that when we're giving that energy. And so I think it's also really important to be able to keep tabs on those reviews, which month to month we're monitoring our reviews, we're counting them, we're reading them out loud and talking about them. So that's always really helpful when you're building success. I think just having good morale among your team is probably my favorite gauge of success, because if my baristas aren't happy, I can't ensure the success of their service. So I think that's the main thing that sets a team up for success, is positive morale. And I always say that it starts at the top. So, myself, my assistant manager, and my shift leads, we have to be like doing our best to be not only feeling positive, but really like emanating that positivity and making it feel genuine. Genuine service is so important. So
Well, like, digging into that some, how do you get your team to that point, right? Like, is it you hire anyone and you've got this okay trainer who trains that and
like
distills that into people? Or is it, I mean, are you looking for something in individuals where you're like, okay, this person, we can teach them how to make great coffee, but I need this person to have empathy or some sort of character trait that is going to ensure that they're going to fit, because you're a very busy cafe. In retail, it's very monotonous. You're kind of doing the same things over and over again to a certain extent. You're having to give a lot of yourself as a person, because we're serving people here and it's service. And so how do you ensure that you're achieving that with your staff and then maintaining it?
Yeah, great question. I think it really starts in the beginning. Even before interviews, we as a team have to be calibrated on what our values are as a company. I think we have a great example right behind us. Our core value and core behavior mural. We'll bring our attention back here. Maybe we can get a shot of it and we'll put it in there. So it's actually all 4 of our core behaviors written out and then ripped up. So our 4 core behaviors are working with grit, pursuing humility, achieving the unconventional, and creating opportunity. And so those are things we're always trying to do at every level of service, no matter where you are in this company. And so all of those words are ripped up and put on the wall, and so you can't see them. And the goal is to be able to feel those, but not necessarily be like hit over the head with them. Instilling, having that calibrated at the top helps me to interview people with those behaviors in mind. And so when I'm interviewing folks, I'm looking for them to exemplify those 4 behaviors somehow through their experience or through their interview with me. Like, I want to hear about your grit. I want to hear about how you're humble, or like how what you're doing is unconventional. Like, I don't want just cookie cutter. I mean, there's a place for that, but it's also a great to curate a team that's varied and unique and interesting to talk to, because we have to be around each other a lot, and that's the crux of what we do, is like sharing our life with the customers. So it's really fun when you have an interesting person behind bar to round out your team. So that's really important. I just had some like great interviews, which is why I think about this, because like looking for those qualities in folks can get tiring after a little while. But I just think about my team and how much they deserve like good help and like good coworkers. So that's really important. So it starts through hiring people with like values. And then I think when I'm managing in the cafe, how do I maintain it? Oh man. So I think you really just have to make sure that your baristas feel taken care of, first of all, through honestly a lot of work-life balance is what I drive home. I like to make sure that baristas feel like they can really push themselves behind bar, knowing that they're going to have some time off and that maybe they're not going to, have to be doing that 7 days a week. So ensuring that they have balance in their life, and ensuring that they have the proper training, before they come up to anything. I always talk in people's early phases in the cafe about how, don't worry, we're not going to throw you to the wolves. You're going to have like a lot of ahead of time training online, in person, with myself, with Josiah. There's so much that goes into training a barista. It takes like probably at least 3 people to fully train a whole barista. So there's always, it's ensuring and driving home the point to them that it's not just me and it's not going to be them thrown to the wolves, that there's a whole team behind them supporting them, and then showing them through that training process, showing them that all of the training that they have ahead of them is really exciting. Like, this is, you have it all laid out before you when you start, like this is your whole curriculum. It's so exciting for people to see that and be able to expect that. So I think that sets them up to be able to work through it with a lot of vigor, which is a thing that I think drives this cafe specifically forward.
And I would imagine, and I have some insight because we have worked together, but I would imagine that excitement kind of comes easy for you, especially in your coffee story. You were sharing how unlocking that next chapter or learning something else and kind of pushing yourself was kind of a motivator. So I'm sure as a cafe manager, holding a new barista's hand through it, you are naturally getting them excited. Would you agree? Like, it comes pretty easy.
Yeah. And I think that's another part of it that's super important, is your attitude and your demeanor through it all, because you can be totally fully set up for success and then have a negative attitude and it doesn't even matter. You have to like maintain that relentless positivity. That's like, it just, you can't ever give up on it. And if you are having a bad day, you can't let others feel it, because that's not what they're here for. And it's honestly a great way to step outside of yourself. Like, it's more important than what I'm feeling right now. It's bigger than me, and it's really great. I think that actually reminds me of the second part of, I think, my life that really prepared me to be a manager was my experience as a ballet dancer. I did that professionally for about 3 years after I graduated high school. Throughout, like, as I was graduating high school, it was about 3 years total, but 2 years while I was still in school. So it took a lot of dedication and a lot of meticulous, consistent focus over the time, and that can really burn someone out. And I think that the same thing can happen behind bar, but you have to have the sense that you're part of something larger. And in the ballet world, you're doing something for that larger canon, essentially, of all of the ballet works. But here we're essentially working for the coffee canon, right? And it's so important what we're contributing to it. So I think day to day, just keeping in mind that we're a small part of something so much larger and that we're really important to making it happen. I think that's really exciting for people to hear. Like, that is really cool to be able to be a part of something so much bigger than just yourself.
The coffee cannon.
The coffee
I like that.
I think that's
can
the
take
name
it.
of the podcast.
The coffee cannon. Well, let's talk about that more. Like,
Okay.
what are one or two things from your experience in ballet? What are the pro tips for people where it's like, strategies or tactics you use to bring yourself to that place of bringing the good vibes to this space?
I think taking a step back from the moment is super important. I talked about it a little bit a moment ago, but like compartmentalizing whatever moment you're experiencing and understanding that the only way out is through. I think that that's a really important mantra that I've found repeating over and over throughout my barista time, my management time, and it's not going to be fun to get through it if you're feeling negative, So I think that there's a lot of beauty that I found in ballet that came just through the nature of what it was. And it was always there to recognize, and you could always feel it. And I think that it just takes recognizing the beauty around you always to be able to get you through those harder times. Like, so when I'm working in coffee, I'm looking around it and I'm tasting these beautiful flavor profiles, these different roasts, the different varieties. And I think that it's focusing on the beauty and the things that are good to look at and that are, making the journey enjoyable. So I think keeping those in focus, that's probably the main thing that I bring. And of course, like a sense of relentless dedication. I think that the fact that you're never done learning and growing is really important in dance, but I think that that applies obviously wherever you are in life. And I think it's really important in the cafe to keep always learning and growing, because the coffee world is never going to stop growing or changing. We have to keep growing and changing with it.
Those are great tips.
Cool.
Yeah. What pivoting? You've been here a minute with Madcap. You've competed, which makes you look at a coffee very intimately. What's been your favorite coffee that you've experienced in your 4+ years at Madcap? I know we didn't prep you with that question.
They did not prepare me for this question. That is really tough. That's tough. Okay.
Your job's on the line.
Oh, man. Well, I will give right here a big shout out to Luis Reynoso. That is the coffee that I competed with back in 2021, 2022, 2022, I think.
2022. Sounds right.
Yep.
Dang, that was 3 years
Yeah,
ago.
that's
Wow.
crazy. Beautiful washed coffee from Colombia, the Tolima region. It's just, the expression is so rich in so many different ways, depending on how you pull it. Obviously, you can get really red cherry forward, depending on if you want to get a little bit more baking cherry. You can get more cooked cherry if you like, be a little bit more rich, like a straight cherry off the tree in Traverse City. There's always a presence of a really bright, crisp acidity. It can be anywhere ranging from like fresh orange juice to some yuzu sometimes, but always like a lighter citrus. It's very, very, very nice and crisp. There's a lot of deep, rich florals that you can extract from it, a lot of hibiscus flavors and dark chocolate. So I think there's a lot of versatility with that bean. It's great as espresso. It's great as brew. Man, loved Luis Reynoso. And also the nougat finish, the texture. I can't not talk about the nougat call. That is actually my favorite flavor call, and I'm actually known for that in the cafe. If you see nougat, I probably dialed it. I love that flavor call. I think it hits the texture right on the nose when it's silky like that. So it's great. Honorable mention to Luis, but I think overall, giving a shout out to what we're about to have on our menu, I think Getway is probably my number one favorite. It's out of Burundi and it carries so much electric vibrance to it. I think like just lemonade, pink lemonade. There's a lot of really fun florals, a little bit of honeysuckle sometimes, balanced by a really nice syrupy sweetness. Sometimes it'd be lighter like agave, depending on what you're getting that day. But I think Getway is probably my favorite. But also, I loved Finca Santa Cruz last year. Sorry, I have to say it. Loved it. That was a natural.
I know. I like. Okay, there's another favorite.
It was a Mexican natural, and I love Mexican coffees. I also think like the story behind Mexico as an origin is interesting. That they have such a thriving cafe scene within the country, just because of the difficulties that they run into with exporting and importing things. I think the way that they make do and make it flourish in their own country is beautiful. So I love tasting it.
And I think that coffee made it in the best of set at the end of the year that year.
Yeah,
it did that
it was
year.
one of the top 10. So it was definitely, you weren't alone in loving that coffee.
It was a cafe favorite too.
That was a well-loved coffee.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Baking spices.
Okay.
Yeah, you and naturals, I get it. I understand.
When you were talking about Luis Reynoso in competition, I couldn't help but think about, so in competition, you make a signature drink that uses that coffee in it. And I remember yours, but I don't fully remember it. Do you remember what drink you made for competition?
Yes, I did. So it was Luis Reynoso espresso, and then we actually used one of our teas. We used Song Tea out of San Francisco. Wonderful tea company. I love the way that they source and their ethos behind their sourcing practices. But I used their Shanlinji Winter Sprout tea, which is an oolong. Lovely tea. The flavor profile is like nothing I've ever had before. It's like cotton candy, kettle corn, and I'm not lying to you. That's what it tastes like, cotton candy. It's crazy. It blows people's mind all the time. It's amazing. So I used a concentrated steep of that with the Luis Reynoso espresso, a little bit of rose water, and then I actually used a black sesame as a syrup that I made as a simple syrup that I made with honey instead of sugar. And the honey I got from my mother's bees. She's a beekeeper. And on her yard, there is a pear tree. And so their spring harvest, the honey is often really floral and like pear blossom forward. So I thought it was a really nice pair to the light sweetness that the black sesame brought with dragon fruit. That's what it was. Dragon fruit. That actually inspired the black sesame because the dragon fruit was such a light sweetness and the seeds looked like black sesame seeds. So it was like dragon fruit, black sesame, and honey, simple syrup with the espresso and a little bit of rose water.
You performed very well that year.
Thank you. It was
there
a moment.
Was a lot of potential for a very strong. Well, you finished very strong, but you were very much in Madcap's ethos of maybe going over time.
Oh yeah, we love to just talk.
We do love that.
That's why we have a podcast.
Can we talk about competition for a hot second?
Sure.
Okay. Because this isn't the first time I'm saying this. Rhianna and I used to work together.
A great coworker, honestly.
But
One
I
for
remember
the books.
my first competition experience. I didn't know what it was other than like you talking about it and whatnot. But I never like witnessed it as like a person. But Rhianna and another one of our coworkers were competing that year. I just remember seeing Rhianna spend hours in the training lab. Like I was like, oh, I don't know what she's doing, but she's there doing some practice stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember when you came. It's like when you come back from like war or something. You came back and your workflow. I remember like I felt like I was not dirty, but like Rhianna came back and I was like, there's not a single drop of water or flake of coffee anywhere.
The tech judges and their scale eyes, they scare me.
That was incredible.
Thank you. It changed me as a barista. It really is like war. You go and you come back and you're so different in the best way, really. I mean, I'm so glad that I had a lot of barista experience before I tried to compete because it would have been a hot mess if I didn't. It still felt like a hot mess, but I don't think it was a total hot mess. But I loved how intimately I got to know that coffee. It was so great. Like, working extra hours after shift to dial in coffee ended up becoming so fun. Like having 10 recipes that you're pulling every day and getting to taste how they change is just really fun, like study in espresso. It was really fun. I forgot what the question was. There was a question.
There wasn't really a question.
Okay.
He didn't ask it.
You answered a statement very well.
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm grateful for that.
And it was
I didn't
so
have a
fun to
question.
be so clean afterwards, and now I can be a
He was
manager
trying
and
to
tell
point
everyone to
it.
be so
He
clean.
felt inadequate after you came back.
Yeah, I had.
as a barista.
I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
come on.
it was a carrot to chase for sure.
You were an amazing barista. Now you're an amazing trainer, and you're helping all
Just-
my baristas become amazing, which is
And now you're judging
lovely.
people at competition.
Exactly.
True.
You're the
True.
one with the scale eyes.
Didn't bother to try it yourself. Just went straight to judging.
Straight to judging. That side of the table is very nice. I get to taste all the drinks then. Did you ever compete with a Reynoso coffee?
I did. Yeah, I competed with 2 different Reynoso coffees because we used to buy coffee from Luis's brother, Didier, and some things happened, and then Luis took over his farm, so now it's just all Luis's coffee. But yep, competed with Luis. I think finished in the top 6 in the U.S. with his coffee at a year I can't remember at this point. One of those
1980.
2011 maybe, somewhere in there.
Nice.
But yeah,
You
we've been
finished top
using their
10?
coffee for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
remember top 12? I don't
somewhere up there.
Top 10, yeah, no, I
We'll
think.
say top 10. That
I know.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
there was
Semifinals.
like 40 seconds or so, or 4,
Oy.
which equated to 40 points that sort of changed the landscape.
That'll
But
do it.
but
That'll
made
really
it
do
through the first round.
Mhm.
With,
That was my
with
main
coworker Ben Martin.
achievement. Yes.
Now of
Shout
Ally
out.
Coffee. Shout out Ally.
Shout out Ben Martin.
And then they both made semifinals together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a strong performance that year. Yeah, she got too comfortable in the semifinals, and
I think it was like 50 something
was a
seconds
lot.
over. I was almost disqualified. It was crazy. I looked at the clock and I was like, and time. That's it. Okay. Wrapping up. Yep.
Do we have a redemption tour coming up sometime?
That remains to be seen.
I'm going to
Who
just keep
knows?
asking.
We've been vying for that.
Maybe one day I'll say yes. Who knows?
Shifting gears out of competition and more so just like greater scope of coffee. I know you enjoy, traveling, going to restaurants, trying out other cafes and whatnot. What do you look for in other cafes that excites you? Like you walk in a space and you're like, ooh, they've got that, or it feels like this, or what is that thing for you or things for you?
Okay, well, it starts when I walk in, I think, because I can't judge an exterior too hard. I don't want to put a judgment on the exterior only. So I get in the space. I want to see what it feels like right away. My first impression is always the lighting. I'm really sensitive to the lighting. I want it to be warm. And I like it when it's brightly lit for coffee because then you can really see how clean the baristas are, because I think it really becomes a stage when you're up there. And I like thinking of baristas being on stage and like we're showcasing our product and we're performing with it. So I think that's really what drives home the quality experience that we're going for. So, when I'm in another cafe, I always like to see if they're doing something similar. I like to see how is their lighting, how is the space, how do they work with the space? Because sometimes spaces can limit you, but how do you, work within the space? How do you design within the space? What do you have going on for that? Is your branding consistent? I think that's something that I like to look at. But really, when I go brass tacks, I'm judging the cafe, I'm really looking at the baristas and how they're executing and their space and the energy with which they're executing. I think I like to teach people to work with a lot of energy behind bars. So I'm always looking for that too when I'm in other places. So I want them to be like positive with a lot of that energy too, and like if it's busy, are they working fast? Or if it's slow, are they finding something to do on the side? So I'm always just kind of watching, and then I'm tasting and experiencing what they're providing with that energy. I always like to see if they have a single origin. I'm always going to taste that for sure. Probably just by itself as espresso. Maybe in a cortado, because I always like to see how is the milk steaming practice here? How does it compare to ours? I'm always thinking about our cafe, not in a comparison way, but just to gauge where we're at within the larger picture of our community. I want to see, are we still performing, I think, at this high achieving level that I feel like we are? I want to make sure that we're also still delivering something unique too. So it's really fun to go into other spaces and see if they're also working with a single origin. What kind of machine do they have, right? Do they have a La Marzocco, or do they have something else? Do they have what type of grinders? Really interested to see like how they're using the machinery too. If like I don't know, just really interested to see other cafes' practices and habits too. It's fun to just observe.
So you are always judging.
I was
Is
going to
what
say,
you're
she needs to
saying.
judge
Well,
next
like,
season.
holy smokes.
I mean, it's just,
I mean,
you take it all
we
in.
can relate, I think. But so, I mean, so would you, am I misspeaking to say that like when you walk into a cafe, it's hard for you not to immediately turn it on?
It's hard because I mean, when you're a manager of a space, you're looking at, I don't think I can't turn it off. When I go to a restaurant that's like, I'm like, bye, have a great day. I'm like, crap, I'm just a customer here. I don't need to be greeting them right now. Like, it's hard to walk into a cafe and not be thinking about that, but it's never from like a judgment perspective. Maybe I am judging a little bit, but it's not like I'm judging you harshly and I'm going to tell you about it. I'm always enjoying myself when I'm in another cafe because I know logically that it's not my circus or my monkeys when I'm in that cafe. So that's always reassuring. And it's always just from a comparison point of like, where are we at? Just kind of gauging the room, never from like they have this or we have this.
Well, wouldn't you say that mentality is super, like if someone listening was like, is managing a retail space for me, I think that is one character trait that like can't go unspoken, that your ability to walk into a space and be able to like workflow could be so improved for that team if they situated these things, the grinders there, and they
Right.
and I think that practice and practicing it in spaces, whether it has to be intentional at first that you think that way so that it does become unconscious, makes you so valuable in your cafe space. Because to the point you made earlier, like one of the best ways you can support a team is through creating a space behind bar that is comfortable, ergonomic, efficient, clean, where the baristas, when you watch them, when you watch your baristas at playback here, interchanging and the moving from the different roles that they're in, and I mean, they're, we've joked historically, like a good cafe, the workflow is like a dance. You can just tell, like, hey, they've been trained well, like they've worked together enough to have some unspoken cues that exist, and it's just super fun to watch. And like, you also know from a certain extent that movement and interactions and workflow impacts the customer's experience even when the customers don't realize it, right? So I think everything you described in terms of what your brain does when you go into those spaces is what makes you so valuable in what you do.
Thank you. I mean, it really, like you talk about it like it's a dance. It really is a dance. And I think that's so important to creating that customer experience that is next level, that, it's like our core values on the wall. You can't see them necessarily, but you can feel them. You can feel that the baristas have that unspoken dance language together. We have one word cues that mean so much more than just that one word, or we have signals that we rely on as baristas, and that communication at all levels at all times really drives it home. Super important.
100%. All right. So how are we feeling?
It's spicy.
I mean, I know you've been talking a lot, but I was like, the drink mine's almost half gone.
Do you see all the jalapeno powder that's settled at the bottom?
We'll work on that.
Should we chug them for the...
I'm not chugging mine.
This also makes a great shifty at the end of shift when we have something behind bar to make it a little bit even more spicy. It's great.
We did have a regular ask us about these just before we started recording, and immediately said, wow, some tequila in there would be really nice.
I mean, I don't know what he's talking about. What?
This was on our menu 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
2 years ago and 3 years ago, I believe. Yeah. This is my third time serving it. I'm so excited. It's great.
I think spring of 2020 is when it launched for the first time.
Yeah.
So I think each year a drink comes back, there's like subtle iterations and changes, like this glassware, these little gummy situations. So it's fun to see how they kind of grow and evolve and age over time too. But
I think this is also one of the best things that we do as a cafe is our seasonal program. 3 new seasonal drinks, or returning from the coffee canon seasonal drinks. I think it's awesome to have, a book of drinks that you've created as a team, and to, inspire that in your team. It's great. Lots of experimentation going on month to month, which is really fun.
And I feel like I know the answer, but you all enjoy the seasonal drinks. Like, your team enjoys executing them.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're not, it's not just coffee and tea with syrup or something. They're very madcap, so very elevated. You all are making the ingredients in-house. You had to make a tea concentrate for us. We'd already prepped the pineapple juice and jalapeno powder, but it's all made in-house.
Yeah. And I think another thing we do is we like to experiment with different techniques. We're doing like milk clarification, we're playing with different types of foams. And I think that's another thing that keeps the baristas really engaged is researching how can I make this flavor happen in a different way, or how can I make this texture happen with a different flavor. It's fun, I think, to encourage that type of craft experimentation rather than just like a syrup and a coffee.
Well, I think at one point we tried a drink that we were going to try to simplify things and just be like, let's just use this syrup so baristas don't have to worry about making it. And I think baristas' feedback was, no, we want to make it in-house because we can do it better than that syrup.
Yeah.
Like, heard. Cool.
Yeah. And that is what we've instilled. Don't make this easier.
How dare you? How dare you let me make it easy? It's so fun. You feel like little scientists behind bar when you get to scrape the vanilla beans. It's awesome. It's great.
And it's fun to be the customer side of things, to reap the benefit of the hard work and innovation that goes into it.
Yeah.
This wouldn't normally be my vibe, but it's the spice that we're recording in the afternoons. We weren't going to do coffee, maybe too early for happy hour. So
I think it's great in between.
It should live on the internet that yesterday Trevor had one of these pieces of candy and genuinely liked it.
I was a little shocked. Yeah.
I think everyone,
but
it's shocked, so.
It's tahini and chili. Also, I want to, the gummy was my idea and everyone kind of gave me shame for it at first.
Look at us now.
Now we all love it.
I think it's a great touch. I like giving something on the side that rounds out the entire experience, for the customer. It's nice.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. With a lot of chili powder on there. All right. Well, that's a good way to close this out.
I like it.
Rhea, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
For not just your time and chatting us up, but just thank you for all your work you do here. Leading a great team. Glad to have you here at Madcap for sure.
Thank you. And thank you for setting this team up from even higher up above to succeed. It really takes, we notice, it takes a lot of diligence from you all. Yeah.
It takes a village. Toast to send us off.
Cheers. I like it.
Howie Bling.
Bling, bling.
Howie Bling.
Thanks for joining us on The Proper Cap. You can find us where you stream your favorite podcasts. Where do people stream podcasts, Josiah?
Usually on Spotify.
Apple Podcasts.
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud.
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah, we'll be on YouTube. You can watch us looking at each other and the cafe behind us.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, everywhere you stream.
Thank you guys. It's been great.
Thanks so much. And until next time, of The Proper Cap, stay proper.
Stay proper.
For joining us, folks.